across the stars we fly, soul citizens, bringing us that endless sky. We each build up what we want to be, but together we're making history on and on. On and on. On and on. On and on. Johan, Captain Jones, Fast Card FC, Gomab ATL, Griffin Gaming RPG, Jade Star Watcher, Karate, Colossal, SeriousFun, Savagio, Unique, Yo-Yo Man!
Hello again. This is Griffin Gaming RPG, and I'm joined with my good friend and co-producer, SeriousFun. How are you, my friend?
I am glad to be here. How are you?
I'm good. You ready for round two?
Oh, I'm leaning in. Let's do it.
Okay, well, we had our little break here, and as mentioned earlier before, you know, our show is now split into two parts. Our first part is our Star Citizen this week, which we just completed. If you haven't seen that, be sure to check that video out, where we talk about all that's taken place within the Star Citizen community since the last time we were here. And now we are talking about our subject today. And our subject today, my friend, is Star Citizens board gamers. I told Fastcart last week, I don't know if board gamer is going to come after us for kind of taking a spin on his name a little bit, but you know, the emote is universal, so I feel safe about that. But board, shout out to you, okay? Shout out to you. But obviously, this has been a topic that has come up before, not necessarily on our shows, but we have talked about it a little bit, and so we want to kind of talk about this thing of being bored in Star Citizen. I think there's some realness to it, especially if you've been in the community for any length of time. There's some people who, we watched a video last week with a guy who says he's been playing for the last year daily and he enjoys it. And there are some folks who are just like bored. And so we want to talk about that a little bit, and maybe even hopefully come up with some suggestions and ideas to how to fight that boredom, or how to protect yourself from that boredom. Some quick shout outs real quick though before we go. Iron Thatcher, Hunter Olatide, and Lloyd DJ 3D. Thank all of you all for the follows. Saw that drop in a little while ago, and we were in the middle of a conversation, but didn't want to think that we missed the fact that you guys have decided to follow us, and thank you so much for that. Sirius, you opened up with a statement earlier for those who may not have been here when the show first kicked off, and it was talking about this idea of being bored, right? And
yeah, I mentioned, I was going to say, I mentioned my blessed mother, and she would come into my room filled with Micronauts and Shogun Warriors and $6 Million Man figures and uh and Legos and Tinker Toys and all kinds of stuff. And I would sometimes say I'm bored, and she would snatch me up. And that's funny because I was 6'3" in 8th grade, and she's 5 feet tall. If she's an ounce, she's very short.
Uh-huh.
And she would look me in my eyes and say, uh, "If there's no being bored. If you think you're bored, you're being boring, right? Now get out there in and amongst the things that you have, all the friends that you have, all the stuff that you have to do inside and out of this house.
Mhm.
Um, whether it's Encyclopedia Americana, the library, I don't care what it is. Go enjoy your life and make it make sense, right? And I would shut up because she would list 1,000 things that I could do, and then by the time she got to 20, I was tired, right? So I recognize that I bring that bias to this conversation, particularly in Star Citizen, which is a world in which I find gameplay being things as simple as landing on a mountaintop and walking around.
Mhm.
And but I also recognize that this idea of boredom as we're coming at it, and we'll talk about it as we go, has a lot of different facets. They're very real, right? And we'll talk about those. So
Yeah.
yeah, but I definitely I have a reaction that's been built into me
Yeah. Yeah.
by
I
my parents.
Yeah, it's funny. Parents always have those little phrases of things that they say that mess you up as a kid. Like, I
Mhm.
remember riding on the bus in my city, and when my mom would be there, and I'd say, "Ooh, mom, there goes McDonald's," and she said, "Where's it going?" Just to drive me crazy. Just to drive me crazy. So that was her way of getting me to use the correct English. Anyway, you were talking about this idea of the realities of being
Bored
able
and
to go out.
boring.
Well, the thing that you were talking about being able to just get out and walk around and stand on a mountaintop. And I was thinking, if you are that person who steps into Star Citizen, it's funny, right? Look, okay, I've said this before on the show. My thing to coming to Star Citizen was about exploration. That was my big thing, exploration. And my next side after exploration comes into doing things like trading, industrial stuff, mining, salvaging, that type of stuff, right? All that stuff funds my exploration ideas in general. That's my
Right.
general gameplay. Not that I'm abhorrent to anything else, but that's when I got interested in Star Citizen because I was an Eve player. I really loved doing mining and stuff, and that was my thing. Like you talked about what you did in Elite Dangerous. So I don't have that part of the game. And because of that, it's boring. Now, I'm also that person who loves Second Life, who loves Sandbox, and sometimes just wants to get out there and fly in my ship like you, go watch a sunset, go walk through the woods, visit a settlement, and I'm not bored, right? Like I'm not bored, right? I mean, I could do
Right.
that. I could do that all the time. I never get tired of doing that, right? But then
Right.
there's that other
Exactly.
side. There's that other side of me that is not being fed, right? And it is not getting what I need, and so I can find myself on both sides of the fence when it comes to this topic, right? So
Hmm.
what I want to talk about is what are the things that CIG, what have they given us? What succeeds, what fails? What are some things that we're looking forward to? And I broke this kind of down into three areas of how many people approach Star Citizen. Now, mind you, I know that people can approach it from a lot more than this, guys, but we just don't have time to cover all that. But I'm just getting some
Right. We
three
can't be here all night.
basic areas, which I know some people, flashcard, would love being able to do, right? Okay, so we're just going to cover part of it, okay? So the first thing I want to talk about is this, okay? One of the first things that you're introduced to when you come into Star Citizen, other than just seeing the world and the universe itself, people direct you to what do you do in Star Citizen? And one of the areas that people are directed to is the Moby Glass. That is
Yes.
basically where people get things to do, mission ideas, Very straightforward. I mean, for those of us who play the game, in the beginning, people don't know what the heck a Moby Glass is because it's not a term that's normally used outside of Star Citizen. But it's basically the menu where you get your missions, where your mission givers are, and things like that. And they come in the form of anything from contracts to actual physical mission givers that are placed in the game, right? So we've seen this change, though, right? Serious. I mean, this list it's dynamic, right? There are times when there are things in this list that, like we used to have in here, racing's not there right now, right? These some of them have remained like been here all the time, right? um what are your general feelings toward the Moby Glass? Is it some place that you do go to find things to do? Is it during certain times? Is it only like when the priority missions come up? Is that the time when you go back to Moby Glass, or do you rely on the Moby Glass to keep you engaged in the game?
I go to the Moby Glass pretty much every time I go in.
Okay.
I remember the previous iterations of Moby Glass
Hmm.
and having much fewer options.
Hmm.
Although some options, to your point, like racing, were there and are not there right now. I expect that they'll come back, but they're not there right now.
Hmm.
Um, and I check it all the time, right? Just to see, because and people have talked about there was a back and forth early in the chat about this idea of whether somebody has done everything,
Hmm.
or whether when they say they've done everything, what they're saying is they've done everything they want to do,
Hmm.
right?
True.
Or that
In
they
some
imagine
cases,
to
yeah.
do.
Hmm.
Or some people are really saying, I have done everything in the game, right?
Hmm.
And lots of times when I talk to people about this, when they say that, they're really talking about this list,
Hmm.
right? They're talking about the list that CIG has presented to them as activities to do in the game, and they have tried all of these. They have done most of these missions. They see that as having done everything in the game, right? And so, yeah, I don't know about you, but I check the Moby Glass often because sometimes I'll feel like I've done something,
Hmm.
and then I realize, like in the mercenary missions, there's a take on a mission that's different that I have not done before,
Hmm.
right? And I go, oh, this is interesting. Let me go down there and see what this is about, and I'll discover that it's a slightly different thing. Just yesterday, was it yesterday or today? I think it was yesterday. I did for the first time the missions where you go to the asteroid base and you actually escort ships to the hangar,
Hmm.
and you escort, and you deal with other enemies that are trying to get to those ships while you're escorting them to the hangar, and you're escorting another ship to the QT marker
Hmm.
so it could take off, right? I had literally not done those before.
Hmm.
I probably got 4,000 hours in Star Citizen, 5,000 hours at this point.
Hmm.
I'm in every day. And so that for me was interesting to see how CIG was envisioning how that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And each step went the way I think CIG wants it to go,
Hmm.
right? Which doesn't necessarily happen on some of my old tried and true missions, right? In
Hmm.
the bunkers,
Yeah.
right? And so going to the Moby Glass on a consistent basis reminds me that I haven't done everything. I'm probably not even close to having done everything, and to pay attention when stuff pops up, not just the priority stuff. What
Yeah.
about you?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same thing. I mean, there was a period of time when I was kind of just doing what I wanted to do in the game. As you mentioned earlier, we all come to a game doing what we want to do. And then I just kind of one day was going through the Moby Glass, I've never really done such and such, and mostly because it wasn't like something I was really into. But then once I did it and gave it a try, I found out that first of all, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, and I was actually more interested in it, and I was willing to build, you know, progress, right? Go through it a little bit more and challenge myself in doing something that was just outside of my norm. It's not like I default to that now, but it's like the fact that I know that there are things in there that I can do that challenge me a little bit more. As I mentioned before, I'm much more of an industrialist, but I
Yeah,
love doing bounty hunting missions. I love doing mercenary missions. I enjoy doing them, right? And where before that was not the thing I came to the game to do. But I found myself enjoying them and time. And mind you, to your point, there are some people who they've exhausted all they want to do. Then there are people who literally have gone through everything in the Moby Glass, and they've
right.
they've kind of did that push of going through it, and then it's like, well, okay, now what, right? Especially in the earlier days, where the mobiGlas just didn't have all this. Now you can go into one category and you may find 20 different, 30 different missions in it. But back in the day, there may have been four, there may have been eight, and that was
Exactly.
it. Um,
Right.
and so, but then there's also a concern about, even though there are a lot of them, you worry about repetition, right? I'm just doing the same thing just for more money, right? Just maybe a little bit more difficulty. And for some people, that challenge is cool. But for other people, it's like they're looking for some variable, something that it makes that changes the dynamic of that particular thing that they're doing. And we can talk about that, right? Because we know that CIG wants to be able to create not just where you just go do the typical fetch mission, right? Even when you're doing something as simple as like a box. Remember the old box missions? That was the big thing, right? Back in the day, right? You get some
Hmm.
boxes and you take them somewhere, right? And which has now become a different level of that. But in the early days, it was grabbing a box, a 1/8, was it called, a 1/8 box, and you would just run and
Hmm.
take it from one place to another. And that was the way that we introduced people into just getting to know the universe and getting comfortable flying and going places. But you could have that interaction, something that would happen with someone that was unexpected, that was not listed in that description, right, in the mobiGlas, that made some type of organic gameplay come out of it, out of nowhere, right? So yeah, the
Right.
mobiGlas is a good place for people too, if they're looking for some things to do, particularly if there's something that they're into. Again, racing's not there right now, and there are plenty of people who enjoy racing. There have been other things that have, and we're going to talk about the things that have come and gone
And
too.
interdictions too, right? There's a whole
Yes.
group of people that joined in the last couple of years who
Hmm.
have never experienced that,
Interdiction. Yeah,
right?
absolutely,
So,
absolutely. So let's look at, we talk about these collection. What me and my bad spelling. I gotta stop doing this when I'm like tired. Gosh. Collection is in that list. What else we have? We have priority. Priority missions are those
yeah.
new things that we've been getting over the last year. These are the missions, well, even longer. When we ever get these
Well, yeah,
special
they began with like,
dynamic events
you
and
know,
stuff.
they began with like Xenothreat, I think, right?
Yep. Anytime we get these
Yeah.
things that basically say, "Hey, this is something that you need to that's affecting the universe in some way or other," that's what those missions are, right? And so right now, the whole thing with the stuff going around in Nix and all that is a priority, and some other things that they're doing for hauling. Hauling missions now have become a thing that we didn't have hauling for a very long time, but those, if you're into the hauling, the cargo people, that's it. Mercenary missions have been around for a good amount of time. Delivery missions, those are also missions that I don't know what is delivery missions. I'm trying to remember what delivery missions are now to hauling. I can't remember. I know somebody in
Yeah.
chat knows what delivery missions are. I don't know what delivery missions are now.
Well, delivery
It's
missions, if I remember correctly, we'll let the chat talk about it, but delivery missions don't have, they are,
Is that where you just have to
uh,
pick up something from one location and they say
yeah,
deliver this to
yeah,
uh so
yeah,
so,
it's
so
not,
station or the farm or something like that? Is that what that is?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's not the levels of hauling where it's like system, planetary, system wide, interstellar, right, intersystem. That's all under hauling, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But,
Okay. Gotcha. Then we've got salvage missions for those of you who are salvagers out there. Those have been out there. The investigation missions are another one. That was one of the earliest mission things that we had back in the day, with the woman whose boyfriend was missing out at the Kovalek station. Remember back in the day, that was
mhm.
like the very
Listening to
first
recordings and
listening to
everything.
recordings. Yeah, that was one of the earlier ones that we had. And then, of course, bounty hunting, which is both PvE and PvP missions as well. Like one of the things that we don't have now are like they come up under the beacon missions and things like that for medical and stuff. And matter of fact, let's go ahead and talk about that, because these
Oh,
are the.
before you do that, I
Oh,
just want to
sure.
say that you, with all of these missions, you have the legal side and
Hmm.
you have the illegal side too,
Yes, that was the
right?
other side. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, absolutely. So these
yeah.
are some of these are some that have been in the game before, and these are some other ones that are suggested, but based upon what CIG has talked about. Okay,
Hmm.
we know that agriculture and farming is something that we know CIG wants us to move towards. So what will we see in these type of areas? What do you think would be kind of good to see for agriculture and farming? Like, what type of mission would you like to see pop up under that category?
Well, I think that there's probably three different phases of agriculture and farming. There can be bringing agricultural supplies to farmers,
Hmm.
or bringing agricultural stock to market,
Hmm.
right? There's that. But then there's also, um, repair, restore, revitalize. We started to get these nascent repair missions where you're repairing pipes and
Mm-hmm.
repairing other things,
Mm-hmm.
and there will be farmers who will need that support
Mm. Okay.
out there in the world.
Okay.
And of course we want to see like, hey, if we don't do this over here, this will impact the economy for this particular product in this area, right? We want all
Mm.
of that.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Would you like to see something where farmers actually have to, for example, there's a famine in Castra, you know, you're a farmer, they need certain things, or for medical reasons, right? They're developing. Maybe the person who's got that endeavor with the dome thing, right? That they need to grow something or produce something that needs to be turned in that will give them a good amount of pay if they spend the time and effort to grow something. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, I absolutely think that that's a good mission. I also would like to see, what they're developing with this Levski thing is tension,
Hmm.
right? So I'd like to see tension where, let's say Fastcart talks about it, bring us 420 of these special leaves, right?
Hmm.
That's funny. But, let's say there is something that's being grown in a particular area that all of a sudden becomes a need to reduce famine or to address a medical issue or
Hmm.
is, but they also need it for their local population, right?
Hmm.
So how do you maybe there's above the board missions to to get that from the farmers, but maybe there are less than savory missions where you just take it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so there's an opportunity to do a lot of different things there, right? Like
Yeah.
legal and illegal,
Yeah.
to Kemi's point, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was thinking about what Kimmy said about hydroponics too. I was thinking about, who's going to be the person to build hydroponic stations, such as for crafters, people with pioneers, or other, the Starlancer build, who also supplies the materials for those hydroponic equipments. Do you go to a farmer if you need certain seed or certain things to grow, right, to produce food? A lot of areas there that they could go with the whole farming thing, which I think would be pretty exciting. Exploration. What do you want to see for exploration? We've talked about this before. We don't know what CIG is defined for exploration. We know there's a lot of different things, but what would you want to see as a Moby glass for exploration? You've got something rubbing your
you
microphone too. I don't know what
oh,
that
sorry,
is.
I apologize.
That's
That's
okay.
me.
Oh, it's you. Okay.
Um, I'm like, let me get this dust lid off and make all this noise. Sorry. Uh the what's interesting about this question is that this question comes to me at a particular point in time, right?
Mhm, mhm,
You're asking me now that we have three systems,
mhm,
right? You're asking me before we have instancing.
mhm,
You're asking me, so right now, I'd love to see exploration do a few things with these missions. One is to ask us to, the same way that we have to uncover satellites and different things that we have to scan for, is to go and scan for certain things in certain places and find them, right?
okay.
Um, the other one is, right now is to um to use the ability of distance and location to find a certain thing, right? So let's say they say, in exploration, they say what we know is a cave on a moon of microtech has this item,
Okay.
right? That's all we know,
Okay.
right? For me, that's a $250,000, 300,000 credit mission, right? Because I'm gonna have to do a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
right? To explore all around that, try to find the cave, go
Mm-hmm.
down into each cave, right? There's that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But with the game as we know it's evolving, exploration might become very different, right? There are stories that they can tell in instances that allow us to do certain things. There is the eventual arrival of transient jump points,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now you've got stuff that could be instance or non-instance. You're just out there in the world and you are scanning for jump points, right? And the mapping and blueprinting of all that. So um, with crafting, we know that different materials are coming in. So where do you go to find that? Um, it, there,
Let me
I
ask you a
think there's
question. Can I ask you a question? Do you think CIG, as they expand the universe, I understand there's UEE space, right? And by lore, UEE has mapped out certain areas. Where do you think it should be where when we go into space, like we don't know what's out there? In other words, maybe we know there's a system there, but we don't know what's there. Do you think CIG will ever do that, or do you think it will always be, here's a system, we know there are these landing zones on it? Do you think that they'll actually give us anything where it's not until we get there that we find out? When I say landing zone, I'm not talking about a city. Obviously, they would know where there's something like that, but I'm talking about whether it's natural phenomenon or whatever, or maybe the I'm just picking a random thing. Maybe the Xi'an have put a settlement someplace and we didn't know they were there. Do you think that they'll leave exploration open to actually finding things that are unknown, or do you think it will always be we know these places are there, we're just going to go there and there's something to do?
It's an interesting question, right? Because, for example, and I hate coming back to it, but in Elite Dangerous, they give you 400 billion star systems,
Mm.
right? And the fullness of the Milky Way galaxy. So there's no, and to date, I think, the player base has discovered like
Like
uh 2%
2%? Yeah, it's like 2%. Yeah, some
of
small
of
amount.
of the Milky Way galaxy. So there's no danger in allowing players in that environment
Mm-hmm.
to say, I was the first to see something, first footfall, first to discover this system, first to do
Right.
that. Because there's not going to be a moment where people feel like they're not going to have a chance to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
This whole civilization in real life will come and go before everybody would have a chance to do that in that game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but with Star Citizen, you're going to have 5 systems, right? And so, how effective is it for them to, with the size that you have at 1.0, have build out something where the whole exploration point of it is for Griffin to be the first person to find it, and for 5 million other players to be disappointed that they don't have a chance to be the first to do that,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or not that they didn't have a chance, but it's not like they can look at that and then go, well, now let me go find my thing, right? There's not going to be 5 million original things out there. As the systems get bigger, my hope is that CIG has a game design where they say, all right, we're going to put X amount of systems, curated systems in the game. And then we're going to use, at that point, Planet Tech Genesis version 3, Planet Tech V9, or whatever it is, to proc gen / slightly curate out 100 undiscovered systems of various types that they just let be, and people discover them when they discover them,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And for me, that would be super interesting, but that is well beyond 1.0, right?
Yeah.
Now they can use exploration features and test them out once
Mm-hmm.
they have the one point, even starting now, but they could, once they have 1.0, they can start to test for things like that
Mm-hmm.
and see what the gameplay would be like. And
Yeah.
that's been the history of how they approach the project.
Yeah.
But I would love to see a bunch of systems that weren't as curated, but still had the same fidelity that the systems that are curated have because of the way they build Genesis
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that we could discover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it that the way they find a balance for it is we may know what a system is or maybe know what a this is, but there are plenty of other astrological or astronomical elements out there. There are nebulas, there are moons, there are meteor areas. There's all types of stuff, asteroids,
Comets.
right?
Yeah.
Things out there that could be left to be unknown, and we don't see them until we get out there, right? So for that person who you mentioned earlier about that mission where you're assigned to go find something, Maybe all they tell you is that there is a belt in this system, and you have to go out to that system and scan for that belt. And then once you get in the belt, you have to find the right asteroid, right? I'm saying I want that unknown element to exist amidst the, but you don't want it to be so vast and so empty that for some players that need some form of direction, right? Now, there are other ways to get direction, buying information, buying data, things like that, which hopefully the game will provide for people as well. But I just, when we look at the star map, except for in areas that are, strictly the Van Duel and some other stuff like that, the UEE space is pretty defined. And so the question
Right.
becomes, well, it's great. I know this what the system is, and this what these planets are, but where is the unknown in those systems that I stumble across, right? That aren't on the charts, or to the point of my cartography thing is now meaningful because now we're scanning and finding things out and getting data to sell to people, right? Even though the system is a known system, there are still entities in that system that are unknown, right? That still make systems fresh to people, right? That's what I would love to see personally, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, I agree. I
Okay.
agree.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the next category. We got past the Moby Glass gang. Let's talk about um, space DMs. For those of you who are into role play or dungeon games, you know that DMs is a reference to dungeon masters. And even though we don't have dungeon masters, we do have people who basically might play together in small groups or to large orgs, and they may rely on missions from the Moby Glass, but usually plan or stage their own gameplay sessions. We have people in the Soul Citizens community that do that for us. We have people like Captain Jones and Fast Cart. Now, we've been trying to get Admiral Kusanagi, but other people who, from time to time, when we get together on the weekends, that will come up with these scenarios for people to do to play collectively together. And sometimes there's only 3 or 4, sometimes there's 10 or 12. But these groups get together and basically make their own fun. But there's usually somebody who does the planning, right? The DM, the person who kind of sets up the scenario ahead of time, and then the folks come in and do it. Sirius, I know you've run an org, been a part of orgs on this smaller scale, or large scale, right? Even on an org level scale. Where do you land with this one as far as a way for people to find things to do?
Well, I feel like this is the level at which I enjoy the game the most,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is small groups to sort of not like 200 people, but like small to 20 people,
Mm-hmm.
8 to 20 people, um, and somebody playing a role um, in where we're going, right, and what we're doing, and how we see the adventure for the next 3-4 hours,
Mm-hmm.
right? So when somebody says, "Let's all meet at the Voyager bar," and you see everybody come together, it'd be great if social tools included the opportunity for us to party up and then get party communications that took us through a mission system for that night
Mm-hmm.
that could be curated by somebody serving as the small group dungeon master, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, tonight, uh, dig that is trapped in a cave with Copion, and we got to go rescue him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we rescue him, we discover he has a blueprint to a thing that we need to print out in order to get this particular piece on this ship that will allow us to then scan this other thing, and like create opportunities like that, right? And when you create a system, a mission system that combines with social tools in that way at that level, what you get is a billion different iterations of creativity that CIG could not craft on their own,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so their mission system will get them only but so far, but creating a system where folks can do that,
Mm-hmm.
I think gives the game decades of life,
Yeah.
right? Because then it's really about um, people having the opportunity to use those systems to be creative and connect in ways that allow people to have fun. And we've done small versions of that. You talked about Captain Jones and Fast Cart and Soul Station. There have been contests that Dig That and others have run,
Mm.
fashion shows, all kinds of that actually that you've participated in, right? You Almost Over and others. Um, so there are opportunities like that to curate, and if social tools can help with that, right, in ways that allow people to maximize their creativity, I think that this will be one of the most potent ways to experience Star Citizen.
Yeah. I mean, social tools have been like on in high request, high demand for a while, and we've been looking for org, quote unquote, 2.0, a whole lot of stuff that helps people both communicate and structure these type of events. I'm my org is Test Squadron. I've been in Test Squadron for 11 years now, I think 10, 11 years. God, 11 years. Oh my God. Um, and one of the things that they've done is they actually had weekly things going on. They've done mining Mondays. They would do drinks together on Wednesday where people just kind of hung out and did things in game together and helped each other. They even did a very cool idea where they created their own marketplace where at once a week when people would go out and do all their looting and find stuff, they would come together and basically set up like a big swap-a-rama. And people who might have needed a certain weapon, a certain gun for their ship, or might have needed some one part of an armor. They've got 4 of the pieces and they need the 5th one. They would work together to do this. And it was like, this was something that was really such a cool idea of something that they did. But this had to be, to your point, had to be curated and orchestrated. This wasn't found on the Moby-Glass, right? This was people
Right,
who saw
right.
what was in the universe and the sandbox and said, hey, we've got the bucket and the shovel and this other thing. What do we do with it to make this kind of exciting for us to continue to do things together? And so that's been really just some suggested ideas of things. I hope I'm not giving away secret, y'all, but that's what they that's what they did. Um, some ideas of some DM opportunities, and we just talked about it. Small group challenges. I remember once. I This was in the early days of Soul Citizens. I don't remember who was with us. I think it was Dark Knight, and I can't remember who else. But we went out. I go find those places that nobody goes and visits and tries to create scenarios in them. And one of them was Kovalex back in the day. People stopped going to Kovalex, right? And so there were like 4 of us that went there, and we said, okay, there's 4 of us in here, and you guys have got to. Basically, it was like come and get us, right? That's all it was just come and get us. And it was like the most fun in the world because, as you know, Kovalex being all EVA, right? It took something
Right.
to navigate those hallways and those elevator shafts and not knowing whether you're going to get shot. And somebody of course brought a grenade launcher, but but it was a lot of fun while we were doing that. But that was just taking an area in the game and bringing our own gameplay to that area. We talked about racing. That racing is the racetracks that, as we all know, that there were people in the Star Citizen community who found certain areas on certain moons and said, hey, this looks like a kind of a cool place to kind of do some racing. And the next thing you know, CIG paid attention and saw it and literally converted many areas in the game into full-blown racing tracks. And I'm not talking about in Arena Commander. I'm talking about in the persistent universe. And of course,
In the persistent universe,
they're
right?
they're in Arena Commander as well. Piracy. People who do piracy. I mean, I know there's the lone pirate, but there are also groups of people who come together and bring piracy to the game. And we've got some orgs that are out there who have done very structured type of piracy role plays in the game. Sometimes that piracy is nothing more than shutting down an area where folks have to either fight their way or bribe their way into getting. There have been people who've been stopped and basically said, hey, turn over your stuff or pay us a ransom if you want to get your stuff. There are people who've just created. This is non-Moby-Glass stuff that people have just kind of come together and created in the game. And some people struggle with that, but this is a part of the organic gameplay that CIG actually wants to see happen. Now, this next one, Sirius, to your point, is the tough one because org tools really need to be really refined and polished for this to happen in a much better way. And that's org versus org. Now, it does kind of happen in some kind of offbeat way from time to time, but because there's nothing for, basically orgs fight over, they're claiming something, some area, whether it's a space station, whether it's a area on a moon, whether it's a base. There have been some folks who've kind of taken little areas from time to time and locked folks out and kind of, their org is holding something down. But I don't know. And to your point, Power Pixie, to your point, that is one place where orgs have gone as Hathor, right? They've gone because they go there in a group, right? Because it's usually if you want to accomplish the mission, You need an org to do it. But then you have some other people who will come in also, right? And kind of sometimes sit back and watch the org do most of the work and then try to come in and take the work. Or they just start conflict right down at phase 1 at Hathor. That is another example of when people have done that. You got any
And
thoughts
it's
about
one
that?
of the best things.
Mhm.
It's one of the it's one of the coolest, craziest, scariest things to see when you go to Hathor on your own. Just
Mhm.
going, let me go see if I can get some boxes, some loot, whatever. And two groups, whether they're orgs or not, descend on that, fighting from the space station on down and back up.
Mhm.
It is intense,
Yeah.
right? I'm talking about jump town levels of intense,
Yeah.
right? And you're going, I'm not with either of y'all. I'm just trying. Now I'm just trying to get out.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
blow your ship up because they don't know who you are. They think you're with the other one,
Mm.
you know. And now you're just watching. And I have sat in the cut and just watched that go down,
Mhm.
and been very, very impressed with some of the disciplined organizational ways in which squads move,
Mm.
and then some of the just haphazard ways, right? Where they're trying to do this thing, and all of a sudden the ship will just kamikaze in, and that'll be it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so
Absolutely.
it has been Hathor has been very interesting sometimes to just go and watch
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
Power Pixie was talking about. So
Mhm. Okay, well, we covered 2 of the 3, Moby Glass, and then we've talked about the people who are like the space DMs. And then there's this last one, and this kind of goes into the area of more of the sandbox gameplay. And these are players, once again, my bad writing here. These are players who enter the verse and are open to whatever happens. This could be due to their own actions or the actions of other players. They don't always have plans for their game session and enjoy the open world aspect of the game. These are the people who just
and
basically
this
log
is
in,
mostly
right?
me.
It's mostly
Yeah,
you.
this is mostly me.
Okay, let's.
Because and we'll get at it. And I told people in the chat we'll get at it, but there's a feature of burnout that is related to, for me, grinding what is
Mhm.
in a way where I begin to convince myself I've done everything, and I've done everything in this rote, um, continuous over and over manner.
Mhm.
Or I'm more like I jump in and I go, ah, what do I feel like doing today?
Mhm.
Right. And there's always something, right?
Mhm.
Whether I get that stimulation from the Moby Glass, from looking at the ships. The other day I saw, oh, it was the opening of the RobertSpaceIndustries.com website channel for the current event, which is the In Case You Missed It event that we
Mhm.
talked about earlier.
Mhm.
And the way that they've put that up there, it reminds you that Gray's Market Shiv is out there,
Mhm.
right? And if I remember correctly, a Gray's Market Shiv ship is available to purchase in Nix,
Mhm.
right? So the other day, my thinking was, I'm going to get that ship and I'm going to put it through its paces, right?
Okay.
I'm not interested in no bucket in the toilet, but other than that, I'm very interested in that ship because people talk about it as an authentic um, fighter, like
Yeah.
it does well.
Mhm.
And I wanted to see what that was like. So that just came to mind because of what was on the front page of Robert Space Industries,
Mhm.
right? And then reminding us that the Gray's Market ship is available. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I think I can get that in game, right? And so now I'm thinking about planning a trip to X over to Teaches, right? Is it Teaches?
Yeah.
Um, and picking it up and then putting it through its paces there or elsewhere.
Mhm.
That's the way I approach most times. Now, that's 70% of the time. 30% of the time I come in and I'm like, need to kit out the Polaris. I need to move shit. Like I have a purpose in being in, and I'm in and out to just do that. And I
Mhm.
know a lot of people do that too. But most of the time, this is, let's see what's out there. Let's see what there is to do. Let's see what that's me.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking, let's see what's out there could be also bringing yourself into someone else's scenario, right? Um,
Yeah.
it could be you like we were talking about Hathor earlier. you could go to Hathor and your purpose of being there. So I'm going to go to Hathor and see if I can, loot some stuff and get some components. And when you arrive, there's some other groups there that are doing something, and you could have that opportunity to interact with that group. We were at some place. Oh, I know what it was. We were doing. This was one of the times where we went into the ASD facility. This is in the early days of when ASD was running. There was a guy who showed up in a radiation suit. And
Oh yeah.
remember that? And all that guy did was heal everybody. Remember that? He kept
Right. Just
everybody
hang out
alive.
with us.
We didn't know
Yeah.
who this guy was. He was just some dude who was just making sure that, because at that point the NPCs were just coming like crazy. And this guy would make sure if you went down, he'd come over and make sure that you got up, and he didn't ask anything, but that was his thing to do. And I remember him running around in that radiation suit. That was the thing that freaked me out. Then there was the what was the guy's name? The dude who was working the Atlas, and he was helping people during the cargo rush thing. Remember that? He was
Oh,
sitting out there.
they gave him a name.
The
Yeah.
elevator guy. The elevator guy.
Yeah.
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 And he just would sit out there on some moon and load people's ships for them, right? I mean, this was just something that he wanted to do. And then there are people who will, like, maybe jump towns going on, right? And because they know that there's chaos going on, they enter into that. I mean, these are the people who's like, let's see what's out there. What is there that they create their own thing to do in the game? And it may not be something that anyone else is doing, but it's something that's satisfying to them. I'm like you. One of the things I stopped doing it this last year because the updates were happening too frequently. But most of the people who know me when I play the game, they know one of the things when a patch gets settled, I go in and stock all my ships up with all the gear and equipment. Not only do I stock my ships, I usually go to all the orbital stations, not the Lagrange points, but all of the planetary the LEOs, and I make sure that there's 2 or 3 sets of all my stuff there too. So that anytime I'm playing the game with other people, I don't have to worry about going back to my home base or whether I got to run and go get ammo. I have all that stuff already spread out in the universe so that when I'm ready to play, I can play. And that's like my thing to do in the game, and that's my form of gameplay, right? But it gives me that opportunity. And listen, there are times when I've been taking my stuff out there and I had the ship loaded up and I had an encounter with somebody. I may have lost or I might have won, but whatever the case may be, something organic took place. Once again, has nothing to do with the mobiGlas, has nothing to do with anybody else setting up something for me. It's just some form of gameplay that I create for myself within that sandbox, within the universe, which, I have fun with, Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. And let's hit this last topic because you were on this one here. And it's the topic of burnout, that the burnout is real. Let's talk about CIG can have its, not CIG. Star Citizen can actually burn people out. There are some things that you can do that you can burn out. And some of the things are the things that we have listed here. One of them is that quite often we know that a mission can be so much more than what it is. But because the mission is only at a certain point, it's not connected to something else that it's supposed to be connected to. It's limited. We could talk about something as simple as a bunker mission. It's pretty straightforward. You get a mission, go to this location, bump everybody off, and you get paid. That's it. And I would say that that's kind of a limited mission. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't become complicated in some form or that it doesn't become challenging. I'm just saying it's a very straightforward ABC mission and you're done. Okay. And after you've done enough of those bunker missions, it could be limiting. Now, maybe it's not limited because you're looking for a certain gun or a certain weapon that you want to loot. And so because of that, because you haven't achieved that item, you're fine. But once you've got enough weapons and enough multi-tools and everything else, it starts to feel limited, right? The next one is missions broken. You do a mission, you're excited to do it, and you get toward the end and maybe you don't get paid, or maybe something's supposed to come out of the machine and it doesn't come out, right? And you can't complete the mission. So that becomes a problem. Another issue may be where a mission isn't complete. And what I mean by that is, CIG has kind of wanted to give us this narrative stuff that we do because they want missions to be where you could take it to a certain point. And I'll give you a good example of this. Do you remember in the investigation mission back in the day at Kovalex, you would
Yes.
you would go to those different tablets and get messages, and then there was this one point you could go to where you could stop right there if you wanted to and go back, and it would say completed. But if you went a little further and did this one more thing, you got paid out more and you got another message. It was kind of like, thanks for going the extra mile kind of thing. But if you didn't know it
Hmm.
was there, you thought that when you did that first thing and updated that data, that was all there was to it. But there was actually more to it. And that's what CIG, that was years ago when they did that, but they wanted that to be a situation where people at a certain point, if they wanted to continue further with the mission, they could. And we haven't completely seen that happen with all of our missions. And I'm just going through these real quick so you can say, I'm speak a little faster. Lack of community interaction. There are plenty of times when we're doing stuff, but we wish that other players would get involved with us, right? That they would somewhere or other step into the world and help bring a human element beyond just dealing with PvP. Sometimes it happens, but a lot of times folks are doing their own thing, and so you don't get a lot of interaction from other players. They just kind of run past you and they're doing their stuff. Um, Sometimes your area of interest is in the game. You talked about this earlier. Sometimes the thing that I want to do just ain't there. I mentioned it earlier about exploration, right? At the level that I want it, it's not there. And then lastly, repetitiveness, right? People can get burned out because they're doing something over and over and over and over again. And there's a certain point where the satisfaction level just disappears, right? They're just tired of doing it, right? And they've just gotten burned out. So if you want to tackle any of those, fine. But I also want to talk about this idea of how do you not get burned out in a situation like Star Citizen? 10 years.
Well,
How do you not
well,
get burned
yeah.
out?
So I'm nowhere near burned out, and I did a video on this called "How to Be Happy
Hmm.
Playing Star Citizen," and part of it is the mindset that we bring to gaming in general and to this game in particular, right? And um, I won't list it all here, but I spent a lot of time on the research from 2005, like the scholarly peer-reviewed research on this stuff from about 2005 to about 2020, 24. And it tells us that in environments like this, there's a couple of different strategies that we can use to minimize burnout. One, and they come together, right? So it's a combination of gratitude and lightly held, no, not low expectations, but lightly held expectations, right? Our expectations can be detailed, they can be varied, they can be complex, but when we lightly hold them, right, and don't cling to them with clenched fist intensity, we have a chance to engage in the experience, whether it's with other people, with orgs. This works for romantic partners, but I'm just talking about in gaming or with the game that allows us to be more satisfied with each interaction that we have with it, right? So, um, a great example, a small, quick example is we can look at bunker missions, for example, as binary. They either work fully and completely or they don't, right? I was talking with Zombie Pig the other day, and the uh, I couldn't get the 3 wave Miles Eckhart missions to work at 66K bunker missions, right? Because the um, the people that were supposed to be on my side were occupying the spawn closets, so enemies couldn't spawn out of them, right? Um, I could look at that as frustration. I don't want to play bunker missions anymore.
Yeah.
These are annoying me. It's binary.
Mhm.
Or I could be like, well, I'm here. Let me loot these boxes,
Mhm.
right? Let me get some of this stuff that I want to get, right? Oh, and in the course of looting these boxes, I accidentally shot my gun off, right? Oh, now that I accidentally shot my gun off, but didn't shoot my friends reacted to that, exited the spawn closets, and now the spawn closets work. So now I know how to trigger the mission, right? I could focus on, I shouldn't have to do that, right? But instead, I focus on the gratitude. Oh, thankful that I figured out how to trigger this mission. right? Now let me go and have fun with it,
So
right?
let me
So
ask you
the
a question.
combination of figuring out gratitude and lightly held expectations gives us the chance to minimize some of these burnout characteristics.
I agree with you in that scenario where that happens, but what happens when that doesn't happen, right? Because I see burnout on two levels. I see
Yeah.
burnout that is the self-inflicted burnout. In other words, we're trying to get something from a game that ain't ready. We come to the
Mm.
game trying to get something from a game that ain't ready. And the problem is that sometimes Star Citizen feels ready. I mean, it really feels ready, right? But then you get in there and that big freaking anvil falls out of the sky that reminds you that it isn't ready. Okay. So
Yeah.
that becomes a problem, right? Because even if you don't want to, even if you know it's not ready, there are times when it feels like it, right? It's so close to being ready and it doesn't deliver. And that becomes frustration. Not and some of that is self-inflicted because we came to the game in its state that's not done looking for that. And it doesn't help that CIG says play now, playable now. It doesn't help, right? But then there's the other side when I say that the burnout happens, and this time I'm saying it in a different tone. The burnout also happens because it's not ready to. And what I mean by that is nobody wants to do something over and over and over again, and the reward is frustration, or the reward is feeling unfulfilled, or the reward is disappointment, right? I mean that we're not built like that. We're built
No.
to achieve. We're built to feel success. We're built to feel that whatever effort we put in is some way or other is rewarded in some form of satisfaction. And it takes a lot to come to a game like this. Put in time, put in energy, write tickets, do all. Even if you don't write tickets, even if you're just coming in to play, it takes something. None of us have been subjected, at least I'm speaking in general because I could be wrong. Most of us have not been subjected to 10 years of that. You know what I
Right.
mean? 10 years of it, right? It takes a certain level of mental fortitude. And I'm not saying this in a negative way. I'm saying it takes a certain something to be able to keep a good perspective. And that's demanding. That's a lot for an industry that has been created around satisfaction, right?
Mm.
Created
And
around
immediate satisfaction. Right.
right? Created around our freaking, uh, endorphins being satisfied, right? And then you come into this space where, man, take out your coin. You better flip this sucker every time you come in. You know what I mean? Because your endorphins may not get satisfied today, right? And then the last thing I want to say about this, and I'm gonna let you close this out after this. There is a deceptiveness of Star Citizen in its beauty and its potential. And when I mean by deceptiveness, I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm saying that on the surface, we see so much potential, so much beauty, so much opportunity, so much possibility, and we're waiting. You know what I mean? We're waiting. It's like we can't let go to a certain degree because it's like we see where it could go, we see what it could be, we see what the potentials are, and but you can get burnt out. You know what I mean? Dreaming. You can get burnt out dreaming if you
Mm.
if you
Mm.
if you that dream is so close. You know what I mean? It's like it's so freaking close sometimes. Sometimes it's like
And so far away.
and so far away. Exactly. You know. And so anyway,
Yeah.
that's all I'm gonna
I
say
would
about it.
I
You
would
give me your
take
thoughts and we'll
I
wrap it up.
no, I appreciate all of those examples. My argument would be that framework of gratitude for what works and lightly held expectations holds across those examples.
Mm,
They are very different examples,
yeah.
but the same approach holds. And you know, this will get a little bit philosophical, but I think it's you know how like there's physics and then there's applied physics,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Stuff that works in the world. So
Mm-hmm.
there is what we're talking about is a way of seeing and the being in the world that comprises our gaming life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And our gaming life is a portion of our life, right? And those both of those things require approaches for us to maximize ourselves. I don't think that the atmosphere, landscapes, grammar, and vocabulary provided to us by AAA publishers and providers historically has given us those tools,
Mm-hmm.
right? To feel successful regardless of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They are incentivized to give us tools to feel unsuccessful without doing what they offer us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to get our approach to gaming life from the ways in which Activision and Blizzard and EA approach building these experiences, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think we want to bring something else we want to curate something else and bring it to the table. Um, there, Buddhism is Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, right? And the Eightfold Path talks about a right mindfulness and a right um, effort and a right concentration. And people aren't going to do things perfectly because we're imperfect people. But I think there is an opportunity to deploy a right mindfulness to this environment, right? Which is how do we continue to place it into context? How do we continue to be thankful for and grateful for what works? And how do we hold our expectations in such a way that our expectations empower us and don't disempower us, right? So those things are just things that I would ask the body politic to consider in terms of where they're left after a gaming interaction with Star Citizen or several gaming interactions. You talked about 10 years of certain things. For me, I'm empowered by that because I see the pattern of development, right? If after 10 years, I didn't see a generally positive pattern of development where more and more was being done and more of what you call the dream was being secured,
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have been gone already, right? Because I'm not a masochist,
Yeah.
right? Um, but I am seeing that, and I'm able to see patterns and ebbs and flows in that because I have this longer term perspective. I've been here since December of 2013, right? So the idea of longevity should empower our point of view, right? On this project in particular, right? I guess I worry more about the folks who have come in the last couple of years because the game more and more looks like the commercials in some ways, and to your point, in other ways fails those commercials and that playable now in very deep ways, particularly for gamers who are used to a finished product, right? And so I asked them to think about these types of strategies, right? How do you come to this thing excited slash thankful for what works and with lightly held expectations and think more about relationships and engagement and let the other stuff sort of roll. It is I don't always do that perfectly. Um, there are moments where I'm like, just gotta put this thing down and go do other stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and then there are moments, I'll be frank, where it's more the player base and environment that is making me step away than it is the game itself, right? So my hope is that people can think about that in this way, and and I think that that positions everyone to have a more fulfilling relationship with the product. So.
I can appreciate what you're saying in theory. I just think there will
He's like,
I
that's
just
very
think
theoretical, young
I
man.
just
Very
no no
theoretical.
no 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 no. I mean I agree. I just think that you've heard me say this before. I think the industry has fried our brains, and it's difficult.
Yeah,
It
it's
is a
difficult.
difficult thing to do because of the way the industry has, how it has conducted itself in the sense of expectation that players have for games and things that we do in relation to games, and there's we don't even talk about Star
It's like
Citizen.
it's
We
like
can,
my son. It's like my son walking around with screens, right?
yeah.
You get wired a certain way,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
I'm playing
Eh,
Scum right now. Scum has been out since 2018. It got announced in 2016, so it's been out for 8 years, and it got released last year. They went to their 1.0. They still have issues going on in that game, and some of the game issues are issues that people have been complaining about for years. Some of them seem very obvious and very straightforward. It's almost like why haven't they fixed this one thing? And we've had things that have come and gone in that game that aren't there. I can say you've heard me say this about Eve Online. There were things about Eve. I was in Eve for since it came in year 3. I left around no, it was year 4 or 5. I left around year 12 of Eve, and there was stuff in Eve that was out there and things that weren't working and things that wasn't right. I mean, I've been on this rodeo before is my point. And the uniqueness of
mhm,
games that
mhm.
have been out and released but have not delivered in their areas has been can be frustrating, right? There's days I
Yeah,
had great
you've got
satisfaction.
that pattern, right?
Yeah,
You've got that pattern,
yeah,
right?
and I'm saying that there's areas of satisfaction, and then there's those areas of disappointment in games. And but Star Citizen is even in light of that, the commonality of those other games. There's a certain uniqueness to this one that I did not feel with those other games. And so my latitude for tolerance is a little bit different with this one because I literally stopped playing Eve because of there was something going on Eve I just didn't want to do anymore. I'm still playing Scum, but I stopped playing Scum. When I played Scum the first couple of it was beta and first year, I played it like crazy. And then it got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm done. And I only came back within like the last 2 years of playing that game. Right. And I'm still playing it now. But I can also sense myself. There's a lot more stuff that they want to do with that game that they have. They've been showing us trailers and all types of stuff, and we supposed to have these drop ships and robots coming out and people in caves and spider people. Ain't none of that in the game, and it's like, okay, we're going into year 9, and that's not in the
Right,
game,
right.
right? So I'm saying there's some things that I see similarly happening within the industry, even with other games, that tells me, okay, this is just the way it is nowadays. We're not in those days anymore where a game got released and everything was working. We're not in those day and time where there were no more updates. You got the game, it was all there. That those days are gone, and that expectation is still somewhat inside of me because that's the way I came up in gaming. But the world has
Mhm.
changed, and gaming has changed, right? Gaming has changed too. So, okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap it up because we went over today. Oh my God, we went over big time. But I want to give some. We have some questions. I want to give a shout out to Thorn 1234500. Thank you for that resub. I do see that in Power Pixie. I saw you for that follow. Thank you as well. We have a question, Sirius. I'll let you respond to this from.
Okay.
This is from Pops in Space. He says, I hope to see ships working together to complete the clearing the air assignment. Would you like to see missions like science ships or data running ships that need the employment of multiple ship types? Hmm.
Say that again. Say that
Yeah,
again.
he lost me on the end. Would you like to see missions like science ships, data running ships that need the employment of multiple ship types? And he says missions. I don't know if you're saying pop.
Oh, okay. I think
You got
what
it.
I'm hearing is,
Okay.
yeah, missions that require us to use more than one ship type to get the mission done.
Ah,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yes is the answer to that.
Okay.
Right. But not only ship types, I'd like environment types too. Right.
Mm.
Like if I've got to take a larger ship to clear airspace to then come down to a farm, like we were talking about farm and agriculture,
Mhm.
to then pick up farming data that can only be carried by a data runner and get in a data runner there and take off and go somewhere else.
Mhm.
Um, I'm interested in that type of stuff, but I also I want missions that force me to and if you're gonna have missions that require different ships, the mission itself needs to provide the second or third ship, right?
Mm.
I'm not sure it's fair to say you can only do this mission if you have all these ship types,
Mm.
right? But you could also change environment too, right? To go from EVA to taking out servers to having to take off. They they took a cut at this with the early ADS missions where we had to change clothes in order to get in rooms, right?
Yeah.
Well, that felt like the beginning of a mission type where I got to come in with a certain type of clothing, look in a certain way in order to be able to gain access, right? I like that, right? So lots of different changes, I think, across a mission would be very interesting.
Okay. Sounds cool.
What
Sounds
about
cool.
you, Griff? No?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of multiple ships and, folks having to come together to complete something. I think there's the question of dependency. If you're playing with other friends who are on board with that, that's fine. I know, when we used to have what was the missions where you used to have to come out there with some people who had to do cargo, some people had to do combat. What were those missions? That wasn't Xenothreat. What was that? Remember, you'd have to, like, some people would have to go on the
Yeah,
Starfarers and be
I thought it
unloading
was.
stuff. Was that
I thought it
Xenothreat?
was Xena
Was
Threat.
it
Yeah,
Xenothreat?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
and there were times when you had those, like, both groups of people simultaneously, and then there were times where it was just like the people who were just unloading the ships and there were no fighters and vice versa, right? So, there's a dependency that's there. I think that if there's enough built into the game, incentives, you can have that, that dependency can work. But if the incentives aren't there or
Yeah.
players are bored, right? They've done it a million times, they don't want to do it again. Well, then that becomes a problem, at that point. But yeah, Pops, I think that's a cool suggestion that you mentioned there. Okay. All right. I think that's it for this week.
Well, for
What we can
Jupiter,
talk about real quick.
with a
Give
name
me a
like
second
that,
here.
I
I don't
would
know.
wanna
I've got
be
some
neutralized
crazy
also.
voice things going on here in the background. Is next week. I don't have the promo up for next week's show because I didn't create it yet because I'm a knucklehead. But
No, because you live in life.
I
It's
know
all
I
right.
gotta have time. I
You're all
know,
right.
I know, I
Get on our
know,
social media and then you'll see it. Then you
I
don't have to worry about
know,
seeing
I
it right now if
know.
you jump on our social media.
Yeah. Okay. So next week, we'll be going into the month of February, and our show next week is going to be update 4.6. As you guys know, CIG right now the PTU is available to everybody. And next week, the idea is that it will be available and hopefully up and live. But if it isn't, we've done stuff in PTU before whenever everybody's available to it. So let's hope that on next week, you guys will be able to join us as we talk about update 4.6 and all that's included in it, because there are quite a few things in there. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to share that with you guys next week. Other than that, I think that's it, right? Nothing else going
Yeah, I
on?
gave you somebody that we can raid in the
Oh, you did? Okay.
yeah, in streaming alerts, I think.
Is it in streaming alerts? I got to look in streaming alerts. There we go. All right. We're going to be rating Flame 78. That's a new name that I have never heard of. But let's see make sure that they're all there, because these folks, they be disappearing on us when we thinking they're
Oh,
there.
yeah, right when you try to go, right?
There we go. Yeah, Flame 78 is there flying around right now in I can't tell whether it's like a saber. I don't know. It looks like a saber. Anyway, want to say thank you to my co-producer and good friend, SeriousFun. Thank you for being here, helping us get through this dialogue of Star Citizens board gamers. And to all of you who subscribed today, those of you who followed, those of you who were chatting in the chat, as always, we appreciate all that you guys have done and that you're here with us on this Sunday. As we get ready to go into the month of February, it'll be Black History Month. As always, we do a little bit of sci-fi stuff there, so we're going to be sharing some things with you guys during that period of time. But till next time, hopefully, Sirius, anything you want to tell everybody before we go?
Thank you again. When you go over to Flame 78, tell them it was a soul raid. Let them know where you came from. And because you know where you came from, you know where you're going. And where you're going is to us next week, 4.6. We're going to see you right back here.
Absolutely.
Same bad time, same bad channel. So.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to get going in 2 seconds here. We're going to send you over to Flame 78. All right. Stay safe. Take care of yourselves as always. Peace, love, and soul. We'll see you soon. Ciao.